Moral victory. That is the nothing personal pick of the day for Monday. Thank you, Coca. Let's go now. 4869. Moral victory. That's the nothing personal word of the day for Monday, October 6, 2025. Let's catch up on what happened over the weekend, because last week I promised that I would tell you everything that was going on when I could, when it was. And moral victories are something that in sports I am not a fan of. I've told you that. The Yankees did not get a moral victory by scoring 7 runs in the late innings of a blowout game yesterday afternoon, whenever the Yankees lost to the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays took that commanding 2-0 lead by crushing the Yankees 13-7. Moral victories are not when you have to make the closer of the other team at least think about getting up, if not get up and get hot and get in, or high leverage relievers have to come in when it's an 11-run game in a short series. It's what we liked to tell you. It's what we would do in our post-game analysis when we'd meet the media, when we would talk about what a moral victory was, except I wouldn't use the word because it's a word that's ridiculous. There's no moral victory in being down 2-0, especially when you're down 2-0 in a short series, you're going to lose the series over 91% of the time. So forget that. Obviously, you'd rather get the opposing team to be in more leveraged situations. The opposing team's bullpen, when the whole game was not a leveraged situation because it was a blowout. I was not shocked to hear the post-game analysis of Derek Jeter telling you 1 game, 1 win, that's all we need. We've told you that. That's a funny way to do it when you're down 3-0 in a 7-game series. Or 2-0 in a 5-game series. Just win game 3, and then all of a sudden the tides are turned. All the pressure's on the other team for a game 4, because if you don't win game 4, then shnikes, you're up to a game 5 deciding game back in Toronto. I can't imagine that Derek has anyone in Toronto shaking in their britches over the concept of 1 game at a time. You watch what the Blue Jays did in dismantling the Yankees. You watch Max Fried, their best pitcher, who's healthy right now. Although people argue with Schlittler. People will say, well, Rodon, how about him? No, Max Fried has been their best, and the Blue Jays offense at their best, they just got the better in a short series when an offense scores this number of runs. Think about what the Blue Jays did. Forget the fact they actually scored 20 runs in a row over the 2 games, which is staggering. Just think about the number of runs they scored in 2 games. When playoff games like the Mariners and Tigers were 3-2 both games, you're used to 2-1s, 3-1s. The Blue Jays offense just obliterated the Yankees pitching. Moral victory is something that this weekend was a step back in my personal situation with my daughter. And it was, there are little moral victories that I am supposed to be taking for little things that have happened. And I have been thinking about it all weekend, and I didn't know. Again, thank you for your flexibility. As a matter of fact, this week, Tuesday and Thursday, I think we're going to do 9 a.m. shows. We can't do 7 a.m. shows, as I will be doing overnight shifts to try to be as helpful as I can to my family, and I just cannot start at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I don't know how long that will be. We don't know anything, as you know. But the moral victory is something that I want to believe in. I want to believe when there's one positive thing that you can latch onto that, and I've been learning a lot about latching on and all the other things, but my problem with it is that if the destination is going to be what the destination is going to be, where do you stand with the moments of positivity? it's a defense mechanism by some people where you have to latch onto it and be positive and think to yourself, no, this could be 2017. The Yankees can win 3 in a row. It was the Guardians. And then when you move moral victories out of the sports world into the real world, out of the world of on the field games into the world of your life, the question is, does that change how you think about what a moral victory is? So I was pondering this during the course of the weekend, and more so last night, as I was not watching the amount of sports that I would normally watch over a weekend. And I was pondering to myself, is there a way that I can change? Because it occurs to me that the moral victory people are way happier than I am. It occurs to me that the moral victory people are able to take a moment and expand on the moment in a way that I'm not able to do, because for me, it is so hard not to focus on the reality of a situation. I would much rather be like somebody else. I'd much rather be the person who analyzes the Yankees series and says, oh, we're good, we're fine. I have not been able to get there. The other thing that happened this weekend is that I got the flu and COVID vaccine, which I was asked to get in order to not be sick and to do the things that I need to do to be helpful where I need to be helpful. What the people who told me to do it don't realize is whenever I get the COVID vaccine and the flu vaccine, or just the flu vaccine by itself, I get sick as a dog. And this weekend, I got the flu for sure, and I was positive that I had it. But it turns out at about 4:30 this morning, which was hour 36 post-vaccine, I was fine, which means I didn't have the flu, even though I was sure I had the flu. So all in all, Coca, it was a crappy weekend. And so I am going to try to get you through the things that I noticed this weekend in sports. Coca's going to fill in on some things that he noticed in sports. There are some stories, because you don't come to us for recaps anyway. We're not going to recap the games. Go figure out another way to recap a game. But there were some things that happened that fascinated me. So were you aware with the Blue Jays and Yankees that Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett are not even on the wild card roster? And when they were not put on the roster, I assume you were thinking to yourself, well, that's strange. Who are the top 3 starters? Who is going to pitch for the Blue Jays? And you may have said, oh, is it Berrios? And then you would realize, well, no. What about Bieber? Well, I guess so, but Bieber's not a number 1 starter. So they go with Gausman as the number 1 starter. And the reality is that the number 2 starter was no one anyone had seen or heard of. So I will tell you, because I'm not going to lie to you ever, I didn't know who Trey Yesavage was, the starter for the Blue Jays. I had never seen him pitch. My assumption was when Scherzer and Bassett were left off the wild card roster, the assumption would never be, wow, those people know more than I do, because that would go against my ego, which of course is the way to look at it. But none of us look at our executives of the teams we like ever saying that. We always look at the executives and say they don't know anything about anything. So Trey Yesavage gets the ball, and I'm watching, and I'm thinking, he's got some nasty stuff here. Is he a retread? Like, what do we got here? So I did some work on him, and it's true. I'm not going to be the guy who tells you, oh, I saw him in college and high school, and I knew what he'd be. Never heard of him. 22 years old. And I'm looking and I'm saying, this looks a lot like early of the Red Sox. This looks a lot like Schlittler, though the stuff is different. But another rookie who comes up where the baseball people look at him and say, giving him the ball makes the most sense because his stuff is just better than what we've got. Not only is Yesavage's stuff better, and we talked with Blair and Barker on the show in Canada. I haven't done that show in several weeks, which I'm sorry for. I want to get back and do it again. I don't know when I will. But that the Blue Jays do not have an ace. They didn't have a clear 1-1 Freed, I would argue, for the Yankees is. Skubal for the Tigers definitely is. You could argue Castillo for the Mariners, but there's arguments in almost every case other than when you've got an ace. And that's, of course, what Skubal is. And we'll talk about the irony of Skubal and what happened in the Tigers and Mariners game. But when you Savage comes in and he goes 5 1/3 no hit and strikes out 11, the next thing that your baseball people and PR people tell you to do when you get it shoved the way they got it shoved is to make sure that everyone knows, hey, we had not seen this guy. We were flummoxed and baffled, but we'll study it and we'll catch up and we'll figure it out. And that's a bunch of horse hockey. The way baseball works is that when you've got a pitcher you have never seen, you get video. You get to get into a batting cage and look at pitches coming directly from that pitcher. It doesn't replace actually facing the guy. But the truth of the matter is that the Yankees offense got dominated by the Blue Jays pitching in the first 6 innings of the game. Now, why is that interesting? Because we've told you that pitching's going to win. Pitching and defense will win championships. It's not that the Yankees couldn't score, because once someone gets out of the game who you can't touch, the hitters are always so happy to see anybody else. They'll start hitting. And the Yankees scored 7 runs, and you're thinking, what a great finish to the game. It sets them up perfectly for game 3. That is not the reality of the situation. The reality is that their best starter, Max Fried, gave up 7 earned runs. Their mop-up guy, Warren, who you could say to yourself, mop-up guy, he was eligible to be a starter. He may have to start at some point this postseason. But when I say mop-up guy, what I mean is a guy who's going to come in after a starter doesn't pitch, your long guy, if you will. A guy who will go 84 pitches because someone's got to get innings in. The other thing about that game that's going to be talked about, just so you're aware of it when it comes up, is my main man, Vlad Guerrero Jr., hit a grand slam that was the most important hit of the game. It just put the game out of reach. And he did a bat flip from the batter's box where he stood there, and Coke and I did not put together and scratch together the Pablo-like funds in order to get highlight rights. But just take my word for it. Picture a guy who gets into the batter's box, hits the ball like a missile to blow a game open, knowing you're about to take a 2-0 commanding lead over your dreaded, hated Yankees. Stand in the batter's box, flip the bat, and then jog around. Now, Vlad Guerrero Jr., that's how he goes. He jogged around. Outstanding. If I'm the New York Yankees and I see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. do that, I'm popping the next guy. Hard stop. I'm calling down to the dugout to say, you better right now hit Varsho, hit anyone right in the butt, never in the head. Leave that to other teams. Right in the butt. I like the butt because I was always worried when we would call for hit by pitches, which we did. Spoiler alert, yes, we did. I would always implore the pitchers to go for the tushy because the other place is right on the numbers on the back, like the middle of the back. My worries always was that's too close to the head. Like if pitchers miss hitting right in the numbers, then there's a chance of head, which I never wanted. I leave that for other teams who go head hunting. I would never want to head hunt ever. It's stupid. It's not necessary. It's dangerous. It's scary. But right on the tushy. And what I'd say is I'd always want like the outside cheek, because when this is true, I don't know why I keep having to say something's true when it's just true. Picture a righty. The outside cheek is the left cheek. And when I mean outside, I mean closest to the pitcher. When it's a lefty, it's the right cheek. The reason I wanted to go for the cheek closest to the pitcher, we're getting way more into ass than you'd expect I would on a random Monday morning. But those bruises, those really are focused on by a person. So I want you to picture when you've got a bruise and you're a hitter, just picture anybody when you've got a bruise on your butt, and picture you're a righty, you're looking in the mirror. The tendency is sort of you look with a left-handed turn like you're a hitter, even though when you're not a baseball player, it doesn't matter. But just picture the way you look in the mirror. You just sort of do the quick turn. And I want the player to be reminded at all times that he got hit because his teammate pimped a home run or did something against the rules that I would say of baseball that matter and are written, whether they're written or not. But the Yankees didn't do that. And then after the game, I'm listening to Aaron Boone and I'm waiting. I'm waiting. And the only thing I got, Coca, was Aaron Boone telling you how good he felt about the series. I couldn't believe it. There's been a lot of weird things that have happened in baseball this year, he said. This would not be the weirdest, us rallying. It was so inspiring that I felt like running through a brick wall. I just felt great. Now, of course, we're going to find out in the next 4 days whether or not we're right, whether we're wrong, whether the series is over. But if you're Toronto, you're thinking that you're about to go to the American League Championship Series because the big bad Yankees, who got past by winning 2 clutch games, elimination games in a row against Boston, you're about to find out that it turns out Toronto is a damn good team. There is nothing worse, Coca, nothing worse than what happened in the Mariners-Tigers game if you're the Detroit Tigers. To me, it is the single... When you steal a game because everything is sort of screwed up and because you had to play games in the wild card round where the Tigers had to beat the Guardians, yada, yada, yada. Skubal could not pitch in game 1, so he pitches in game 2. And you're thinking to yourself, it's a dream. But we're going into Seattle for the first 2 of a 5-game series. We got to get a split. The Tigers go in and they win game 1 in Seattle, and they're up 1-0, having won a road game. And you've got Skubal going in game 2. Every player in the Tigers clubhouse, every one of them, was greedy as they should have been. Because when you've got Skubal going for a mini road sweep where you're up 2-0 and then it's over, you're going back to Detroit where you have to win 1 out of 2 to advance to the LCS against either the Yankees or Blue Jays, you're thinking to yourself, it's done. And then baseball happens. Now, it's not that Skubal didn't pitch well. It's that Skubal and the Tigers didn't win the game. Now, you'll say extra innings, you'll say it was a late rally, you'll say that the Tigers closer couldn't get it done. It doesn't matter what the thing is, blown save, not blown save, offense shuts down. The fact that the Mariners under Castillo, the veteran Castillo, the rock of their clubhouse, of their rotation, a pitcher who I'd never heard of until yesterday, Coca. Luis Castillo, I don't know why. I had never, ever heard of him or watched him pitch ever in my career. I just realized that's not a good one for today, Coca, because there's so many new listeners to Nothing Personal, and I'm so thankful to you that you may think that that's true. He's never heard of Luis Castillo. And then I'd remind you, I traded Luis Castillo because I thought, hey, he's a bullpen guy. That's all right. We can trade him. Let's get a starter. Not that I don't love you, Dan. Of course I do. That's Straley. I love Dan Straley. But man, if I had known that Luis Castillo would be the type of starter he's turned into, obviously wouldn't have traded him. I don't know why executives, Coca, don't admit that more often. Like, of course, when something happens bad in a trade where you don't get the best of the trade, you lose the trade, or you sign a free agent, why can't you just go right out and admit it? Of course, that was stupid. It is amazing to me that we'll try to spin it in a way to make it that you would think that we knew. As a matter of fact, I've been watching the Mariners because I love Ichiro and I love Seattle and I want the Mariners to win. You know what I'm hoping for is that it's Brewers against Mariners, because then somebody's going to win their first World Series. Do you know that the other person playing for the Mariners yesterday, a guy named Josh Naylor, you know, of course, that also had him, drafted him, traded him. That was one hell of a trade, wasn't it? Yeah. Listen, what am I going to do, Coca? I'm not going to get them all right, okay? Who knew that Andrew Kashner's shaving of his beard, which we insisted he did, who knew that that would make him stink? Like, who would ever think of that? I need my beard like Samson needs his hair. It's absurd. So the Tigers had an opportunity to crush it. The Mariners end up beating Skubal, but now the Mariners go back to Detroit having only split the first two. You want to win the first two the way Toronto did. So it's not like the Mariners are celebrating. However, the way they did it means they're happier. Another thing I never understood, like the moral victories. The Tigers went in for a split. They didn't get the sweep because Skubal didn't win, but they did get the split. But they fly back to Toronto from Seattle last night, despondent, thinking that they would have a 2-0 lead. The Mariners fly to Detroit thinking, all right, we got Skubal, we got this. But you gave up the split, which you were trying not to do. We are such a world of positive people, Coca. Such a world of trying to see things. I don't know, I'm not feeling very positive. I wonder if the Cubs are feeling positive. The Brewers came in and just absolutely showed the Cubs, yeah, we are the best team in baseball. Freddie Peralta came out. If you give Freddie Peralta, who's a legitimate number one starter, if you're the Brewers and you give your number one starter like 9 runs of early offense, do you know how awesome that is? It happens so rarely. It really does. Because the offense generally, funny enough, the offense, when the ace is going, they lose their edge a little bit. Because they're like, hey, listen, we don't need to score that much. We can just score 1 or 2. We're going to win because our guy's not going to give up any runs. And sometimes when your crap is going, like your number 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 starter, the offense is saying, hey, we got to score 8 just to be in the game. The brain, it's such a fascinating, scary organ. If you're the Brewers and the Cubs right now, you're going into game 2 today, and you're thinking to yourself, I got Imanaga going, and I don't know what to do with him. He has not been the pitcher we thought he had been before the season started, and the Cubs find themselves in a position where they have to win the game tonight, or the Brewers take that commanding 2-0 lead. The Milwaukee Brewers ought to be getting way more attention, Coca. It's hard when you still have the Dodgers and the Yankees in it. I understand. The reason why I want to give the Brewers some attention here is that their payroll is in the bottom third. There are players or people, when you watch the game, you will say to yourself that you don't know any of the players. You may know Christian Yelich, our former player, because I talk about him so much. He is the most important in terms of name and quality and in the clubhouse. He is the leader of this team that has been so successful, but just not gotten the postseason success that they would want over this run. But when you look at the names of the Brewers players in the starting lineup, when you watch the game, which I think you're going to watch because it's the playoffs, you're going to say, I don't know many of these guys. And I remind you that when you've got someone like Matt Arnold running the baseball operations, and if you don't know him, look him up. He is one of the best baseball operations executives in all of baseball. Hard stop. He is Andrew Friedman when Andrew Friedman was with Tampa. He is someone who has complete control over how to get the right people with him, making the right decisions almost every time. When you've got someone who's willing to make an acquisition, do you remember when the Brewers brought in Andrew Vaughn? Do you remember how bad he was with the White Sox? Does anyone remember this? He couldn't get a hit. But what executives do is they look at players. They don't look at players the way fans do. They look at players and project, this is what this player would be like on our team. This is what this player would be like given the right attention, the right coaching, the right analytics, the right confidence, the right situation, the right clubhouse. We would say to ourselves, this is what you would call a change of scenery guy. We don't say that in the front office. We don't say a change of scenery. Fans say that a lot in sports. The expression we use is a change of discipline guy. And I don't mean that means a player wasn't being disciplined or properly disciplined or the player himself is not disciplined. What we meant when we say change of discipline, guy, is how we operate our team with our coaches, with our front office. Change of discipline as in the discipline of one team versus the next. And you don't get it right every time. The thing about a small payroll team is if you're going to beat Tampa, which now the Brewers are even better than Tampa, but it's got to be over a period of time that's longer. But even though, come on, Coca, it's been 7 out of 8 years that they played in the postseason. Maybe 8 out of 9, Coca, or 6 out of 7. It's some number that is just awesome in terms of their postseason appearances. That is because they are able to identify players. They're able to identify players who fit in a way where the back of the jersey is not as important as the front of the jersey. And for fans, what their argument is that it's the back of the jersey that's more important. And then there's executives and owners who start buying into that because they want you to be happy about loving the back of the jersey. I would say that your love should be front of jersey. Love the Brewers. The Brewers, of course, if they win this series against the Cubs, and they've only won one game, it's EARLY. I don't know if they're going to take on the Dodgers or the Phillies, but I'll tell you one thing, Philadelphia. God dang it. All I needed was for the Phillies and Eagles to have a good day. That's it. I was in a Philly sort of mood, as you know. We'll get to it later on in the show. But that game 1 with the Dodgers and the Phillies. Did you watch Ohtani? I'm just curious whether you watched Ohtani and then whether you watched Sasaki close the game. I'm just curious whether it occurred to you that you're looking at a team where the leadoff hitter is pitching 98 miles an hour in the 5th inning. I'm just curious if you noticed that. And then I was just curious if you realize that the Dodgers bullpen has been maligned and sucky. And then all of a sudden you realize that the person in their bullpen was a guy who wasn't in their bullpen because he was a failed starter. I was just curious whether that occurred to you at all when you watched Sasaki. Looking at test results while live on the show, that does not seem smart of me. Does it, Coca? Does it? I'm sorry. I've got all these alerts now, Coca. Where were we? Oh, Sasaki. Closing a tight game for the Brewers for the... God, all right, I will get you. I got you, everyone. Stay with me. This is when I need your love right now. 4869. We're talking about the Dodgers-Phillies. We're talking about the fact that the Dodgers, who we don't like Tanner Scott because he stinks, but he's rich. We're very, very unsure of ourselves when it comes to anybody in the back end, trying in any of them. So what does Andrew Friedman do? He says, I got an idea. I'm the same guy from Tampa. I'm the same guy who knows how to identify players, identify situations, and do things that other people won't realize are smart. We had Sasaki in the minor leagues for a majority of the season, hurt for a majority of the season. The fact of the matter is they didn't want to put heavy innings on him. He doesn't need to start for them because they've got 20 starters. So what do? You put him in and you let him close, throw in 100. Doesn't matter that he's never closed before. And all of a sudden, the Phillies find themselves having lost game 1. It's just fascinating to know, and you should be comforted in knowing that your baseball people are actually good at doing stuff. Now, of course, they're going to get fired by owners who want to blame them for doing something. And of course, there's some who are not as good as others. But man, Andrew Friedman against Matt Arnold in the league championship series, you're talking like a major battle of wits that I wouldn't mind seeing. Of course, I think I picked the Phillies to beat the Dodgers. Or did I pick the Dodgers to beat the Phillies? Can't even remember, Coca. It's a big game today. We've got... Phillies really have a must-win. You can't lose the first 2 at home, Coca. You just can't. All right, let's go to the review. I got a story about this one, Coca. Part of adjusting my life right now is that there are several nights a week when I am spending overnight helping out, in which case there really is no sleep whatsoever. And I thought to myself, I have an idea, because while my daughter is resting or in between things that stop her from resting, can I get a movie in? But I didn't have my larger device like an iPad. I had my phone, and I connected my headphones, which are like AirPods, to the phone on Friday night. But I couldn't use both ears because I needed to hear if something was going on with doctors, nurses, daughter, whatever, something going on. So I chose to watch a movie that I'd been told to watch, and it's a movie called Bad Shabbos. And it's a comedy, except I watched it with one ear on my phone at, I think the curtain went up at somewhere around 2:45 to 3 o'clock, and it's not a long movie, and it ended at like 4:30 in the morning. And the thing is that I wasted it because I didn't find it funny. It's about a family having a Shabbat dinner together, and they're trying to cover up like a bad thing that happened when all they had to do was to like call the authorities. But they didn't want to call the authorities because they were scared, because it was like a comedy of reasons why you don't. It's the same reason in the movie world why people never call the cops, and the cover-up's always worse than the crime, because they're like, oh, I can't find out. They can't. Ridiculous. Kira Sedgwick, who I love, David Paymer, who I love, a bunch of other actors I didn't know. And I can see why the movie was suggested to me, because I sort of could see why there'd be a chuckle, a guffaw, and an acknowledgement, given that I've had Shabbat dinners before, and the whole movie's about a Shabbat dinner. But I must tell you, I did not smile or laugh one time. And I can't tell. I assume because it's being reviewed so well, it's because I listened to it with one ear and one eye looking at a bed and one eye listening for whatever. Coke, I made a mistake. So now what do I do? Maybe what I do is I try to watch Bad Shabbos another way, another day. Well, I'm going to try to watch Caught Stealing. Still haven't seen it. So what I'm going to do tonight, when I'm spending all night trying to make a difference and trying to be out as helpful as I can, so I won't be sleeping tonight, which is why we're starting the show at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, because I have to be able to get back from where I am and then get ready for the show. So I apologize that I will be late tomorrow, but I want to try to keep doing shows for you as best as I can. I guess you'll tell me if the shows stink and you're pissed off. But I'm going to try to watch Caught Stealing, but I'm going to try to watch it on a bigger screen like an iPad instead of a phone. I'll let you know if that works. We'll let you know tomorrow. I want to switch gears to the Red Sox now, because Sam Kennedy, their president and CEO, did some talking to the media and did an interview with Sports Business Journal. And I wanted to talk about it because it's fantastic. The Red Sox, as you know, are a team led by John Henry, Tom Werner. They're a team that has been run by Sam Kennedy for as long as I can remember, obviously doing a fantastic job. One of the things that we've had issues with the Red Sox is that they have a level of revenue that we could never get in our best dreams. They controlled their network at one point, New England Sports Network, NESN it's called. We were always angry at what the rights deal was between NESN and the Red Sox, and I've told you how we fight that through what's called the Revenue Sharing Definition Committee, where we make sure that the Red Sox are declaring the market rate for their rights fees. Because when you own the network and you own the team, you'd rather have all the money at the network because that's not subject to revenue sharing. You'd rather the network be hugely profitable and make distributions to yourself than your team being hugely profitable and making distributions to yourself. Because when your team is profitable or has more revenue, that revenue gets put into a pile and gets given to people like the Marlins and the Guardians and the Rays and the Brewers, no less. So what happens is the Red Sox are highly motivated to hide revenue the way other large revenue teams are, and we're highly motivated to catch them. What you've noticed and heard me talk about with Major League Baseball and their rights deals, you've heard throughout, the regional sports network model is in the crapper. You've heard that companies have gone bankrupt. They've gone out of the business of regional sports networks. You've heard me say that teams are telling you we love our new reach. We love the fact that we're over the air and we can be watched by millions of people. And I told you they're full of it. What they love is a guaranteed revenue stream from a regional sports network, the way the Dodgers still have it for a long time to come. Like over $330 million a year in rights deals. What a joke. So, you've heard all that. You've also heard the commissioner try to take all of the rights deals of the teams, put them in a pool, and then sell it together. It's sort of like socializing rights deals. We're going to take the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers and the Twins and the Marlins and the Royals and pretend I just mentioned 30 teams. We're going to do rights deals for all of them. And then we're going to put it in a pot and then split it equally. And that will help the competitive balance. That will help take care of the highest salaries, the lowest salaries. Everyone's going to be closer. And that will make the league more competitive. I'm not sure I understand. When you look at competitive balance of Major League Baseball and who wins World Series, who's in the playoffs, I mean, unless you're the Mets, it's like almost everybody else. Sam Kennedy of the Red Sox came out and shockingly said that the centralizing broadcast rights is good for baseball. I almost fell off my chair, Sam. I don't fall off my chair often these days when it comes to sports and business, but that was it. Because the epiphany that you're having as a Boston Red Sox team president, knowing that you are running Fenway Sports Group and all the amazing things you do, for you to acknowledge that it's good for the entire industry to centralize broadcast revenue, what you're really telling us is what we suspected, which is it NESN, not so good anymore. Why is that important to note? Because there were some regional sports networks that we thought, when all of this disruption happened, they're going to be fine. Yes Network, SNY, NESN, don't worry. They are not subject to the same issues as some of the Bally's networks, FanDuel networks, the old Fox regional sports networks. And you know what? It's not true. And no one believed it when we told you on the Sporting Class, when we told you on Nothing Personal with Pablo, Skipper, myself. Everyone said, nah, are you sure about that? Just think about what would have to be the case for the Red Sox to say what they're saying. Now, there's a couple of other things you could say to yourself that, well, the Red Sox own 80% of New England Sports Network. They own 80% of it. And then you could say, well, that seems like a big amount. That's probably more of percentage than the Yankees own Yes Network. You'd be right. And then you'd say to yourself, 80% of owning something where the revenues are down because they can't get the same amount of money per subscriber because cable subscribers are down and all of the streaming they're doing. We're the Boston freaking Red Sox. It still doesn't add up to the numbers we used to get. There is no more clear example of the fact that the money that used to exist on the broadcast side has gone away, and it's never coming back. Of course, Sam is going to tell you that NESN's going strong. He's going to tell you Marquee Sports Network is going strong. Yes Network is going strong. Why would he say that? Because those teams and those networks have to tell baseball they're going strong, even though baseball knows for a fact they're not. However, you have to say it because when you're negotiating to centralize broadcast revenue and you're trying to get 23 teams on the same page in order to effectuate change in Major League Baseball, there's going to be a negotiation. Hey, Boston, give us your local revenues. Let's centralize all of them. What do we do in return? Because dollars are fungible. So you can bet that the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the teams who are not better off centralizing revenue are going to find another way to get compensated. Rob Manfred and Noah Gardner are not fools. They understand that in order to get votes on the major league level from certain teams on certain issues, there are things you have to do to secure the vote. Now, of course, you could say to me, David, it's 23-7. There could be 7 teams who don't agree with this, who don't want to centralize revenue. And then what do? You can still centralize it. Here's the thing. You can't centralize all 30 teams until you have the rights to all 30 teams. And if the rights, like the Dodgers, are under long-term contract with Comcast, just pretend that were the case. Wink, wink. Baseball cannot, by a vote of 23-7, tortiously interfere with that existing contract. They can't just call up the Dodgers and say, hey, we voted. You got to give up your deal with your network and centralize it all. It doesn't work that way. Well, we have the right as a 23-7 block to do a lot of things, to make it a 2-pitch walk. Seriously, we could. To make it a 7-inning game. I mean, there's some negotiating with the union, but then there's implementation. But don't worry about the specifics of a labor relationship. Just pretend that we have the right to do a whole lot of stuff. Here's what we don't have the right to do, even with the beautiful pillow comfort of an antitrust exemption. We don't have the right to take an existing contract and make it go away. So when the Red Sox are telling you smartly, because Sam is no dummy, when Sam Kennedy is telling you about these teams, these networks, how good things are, the negotiation has begun. And it's begun in earnest because Rob Manfred has said it. He's told you that we are looking at doing 3-year deals right now to replace the ESPN deal. He knows, and he's told you that the national deals expire, all of them after 28. You know it. And you know that he's already indicated. Rob does things on purpose. He's indicated how important it would be to centralize and have the ability to have a big package of all the teams and sell it together. He's told you. One of my favorite things, Coca, of all time, is when executives tell you in sports or business something, and you just are like, nah, it can't be that. We don't believe that. We're misunderstanding that. He's lying. He's manipulating. Sometimes we're literally just telling you what's going to happen. I want to go to the other coast. Perry Minasian. You don't know him, nor should you. He's the GM of the Anaheim Angels of Los Angeles. I only talk about Artie Moreno because Artie Moreno runs that team. There was some question in Anaheim whether, given how bad they are, and it's just, I think Coca could give you some stats if he had them. I think the Angels, is it still true that Mike Trout hasn't won a playoff game? I think that's true. I think the Angels have the longest consecutive streak in all of baseball without making the playoffs. I think that's true. I think that Mike Trout's on the wrong side of 30 and realizing, hey, rich, married, kids, happy, LA, I'm fine, we're good. And I'm not going to in any way yuck on Mike Trout's yum. But if you think that team success and World Series rings, if you don't care about it, I'm fine with it. It's your right. I can disagree because it's all I care about. But, I mean, all I care about from a work standpoint, obviously. But it actually may have used to been, it's all I care about from a work standpoint. So I am not going to begrudge Mike Trout for wanting to be on the Angels. But, man, if you're going to have the Angels GM hold a press conference, I just am not sure I understand how in the world you let him say the things he said. Think about where the Angels have been. I totally think we all know it. He's won 358 games and lost 452. He's about 100 games under 500. He has had a record of years to put together a winning team. He's had money from Artie Moreno to put together a winning team. What would you think when you are prepping for this press conference, this end of season press conference, which they delayed by a week? I don't care whether he was on vacation. Now, if he had a personal issue with a sick child, then delay it all you want. But if he's on vacation or he just doesn't want to meet the media, or Artie Moreno said, I'm not ready for him to meet the media, I'm not sure we're going to bring him back, fine. What is it you think would be the number one question asked? A show of hands from nobody. Hello? Anyone? All right, I got it for you. The question is, you've let go of your manager. You haven't had success at the major league level. What is your accountability? What is your role in the failure of the organization? That'd be the number one question that you'd expect, wouldn't it? What would be your answer? Isn't your answer going to be what you see coaches do, but then you watch Nothing Personal and the host of it looks at the manager? Carlos Mendoza comes to mind, Coca. This stops with me. It starts with me. I'm accountable. I've got to be better. We've heard coaches do that all the time. And we don't buy it, but that's what you're supposed to do. That's not what Perry Minasian did. Perry Minasian decided to go a totally different direction. And when asked about whether he takes any accountability for the failure, his answer was, and I'm quoting, "I'm not worried about that." Hold on one second. Can I stop you there, Perry? Which part are you not worried about? The fact that your team stinks year after year? The fact that you must have pictures of Artie Moreno with a goat? That's why you still have your job? Even though we know Artie Moreno's doing the job, but why wouldn't he just bring someone else in? Why would you agree to keep having the job? Oh, the money's good. That's got to be what it is. I'm not saying that people wouldn't want one of 30 jobs. There's only 30 jobs running a baseball department, but you're going to work for Artie Moreno. You know very well it's like being the AGM under Jerry Jones. I'm good. Take the money. But when you're asked about accountability, you know you're not going to be fired because you would have been fired already. Why not take the accountability? Instead, I'm not worried about that. And then he said, I'm worried about going forward. Where we are at this point in time, making the team better, hiring the right manager. I just can't, Coca. I can't with that answer. How do we let him get away with that? So then they say the next question, hey, how do you measure how you've done at your job? You fired Ron Washington. You didn't bring back Ray Montgomery. You can't keep managers. You keep cycling through them. You can't get good players because they don't win games. They don't make the playoffs. Just curious, Anaheim Angels of LA, how are you doing at your job? And he said, that would be a question for somebody else. And I said to myself, hell yeah. Because he's right. That is a question for Artie Moreno. But when you're asked that question as a president of a team, when I was asked that question, how do you think you've done? I would say, listen, somebody else is evaluating me, but I'll tell you, I think I've made more good decisions than bad ones, but you know I've made a bunch of bad ones. But the rule is, if you have more good than bad, you're probably doing fine. When a GM is asked, hey, how you doing? Well, I'd say that I'm judged by results, and my results stink. That seems to make sense to me also. But no, he just said, ask somebody else. He, of course, went on to say there's been great improvement. And I leave you with this. We are going to remember everything that you say. At the trade deadline, that's the same guy, Perry Minasian, who said, we're obviously really competitive and that's why we're keeping this team together. Was he talking for Moreno? Because since the All-Star break, they have been horrific. They went 19-34 and didn't have competitive games in August, September, nothing. Totally full of it at all times. So for all of you Angels fans out there, what can I tell you? Other than, I really am sorry. And good news for you, next hour after the break, the word angel will not be used. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It is hour 2 of Monday, October 6th, 2025. I want to remind you that this Wednesday, the hope is we will do another So You Want to Talk to Samson. Make sure you call the number. We're looking for great voicemails. 631-377-4869 is the number. Want to tell you off the top, it's one of the favorite things that we do, and you guys love it too, so thank you. Just call that number that you see on the screen on DraftKings Network, on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. If you're watching, hit subscribe. If you're listening, thank you. So You Want to Talk to Samson, 631-377-4869. Write that number down. Leave a message. You may make the show. Hard to believe. I say this every week. It's week 5 already of the NFL. And week 5 started off before you could even look at London and think about any Saturday morning game and watch Dylan Gabriel and think to yourself, wow, he's really fine. The Browns continue to be the Browns. The news out of there is when you've got a broadcaster that did not follow at all. It's not the news out of London. This was the news out of, where did it happen, Coca? It's now making me a blank. Is it Indianapolis? Indianapolis, thank you. Mark Sanchez, Jets fans, you know every show. We say Jets, we say LeBron, we say Yankees, we say Cowboys. Mark Sanchez, that guy, he got arrested in a hospital room. He was involved in a stabbing of some sort where he's the one who got stabbed and the one that got arrested. That's sort of a bad combo. Don't know how this one will end, except for he obviously didn't call the game. I don't know when he will call another game for Fox. When you get the call, this is what's amazing about networks, and it's just how life goes. There's always someone up ready next. There's always someone who's going to replace it. Fox had a statement ready to roll immediately when word was coming out, and it was wrong. But was Mark Sanchez the victim of a robbery? Was he stabbed? Was it an example in such a great place where he got his nice watch stolen? Like, what's going on here? So Fox did an immediate statement. We are deeply grateful to the medical team for their exceptional care and support. Our thoughts and prayers are with Mark, and we ask that everyone please respect his and his family's privacy during this time. You know, when we talk about the two statements, and how when you got to do two statements, be very careful because you try to do only one statement, which is why the first statement usually says, hey, we're aware of the situation. We have no more information. Stay tuned. But Fox went right to, man, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Are you sure? Are we positive we know enough about what happened? Well, the prosecutor's office thinks there's enough. The cops thinks there's enough to know what happened. And that's called, we can arrest him and charge him. So that happened. The second thing I wanted to talk about, I want Coca to come up and join me for the next 3 topics to help me here, because 3 things happened. And I want to tell Coca how I saw them, because I can't tell you that I watched the games, but I did see 2 things, Coca, that happened this weekend that I'm dying to know your view of. And yes, it's not Friday, but when it comes to the NFL, Coca is a master because he sits around like the social butterfly he is and watches everything. I asked him to actually put on a shirt while he was producing today on the chance that I would need him on a random Monday, and I do, Coca.
I put on a sweatshirt. I went with a sweatshirt for this. But I see here that it's the Dolphins you want to talk about, right? Like right
I do.
Off the top. It's before we even
did you watch the game? I didn't see any of it.
But for that, we're going to talk about Mike McDaniel here. And how do you feel about the attire that he wears on game day, where he's wearing like those capri sweatpants and he has like the athletic sweatshirt on? Like, are you in on that? Because for me, it's like I think the game's already lost because he looks like a child when he's on the sidelines.
I feel like you're setting me up, Coca, because I feel like you want to call me old, which you always do. Do I love Tom Landry and how he dressed? Yes. Do I love Dan Reeves and how he dressed? Yes. Do I think that what's his name from University of North Carolina, the old Patriots coach? Do I think that he looks like a schlepper? Of course I do. Do I think that McDaniel looks like every other coach these days? I do. But I'm the guy who didn't like the NBA quarter zips. I like the way Pat Riley looked. But I'm not as focused about that with Mike McDaniel. There's a quote here that I heard because I saw it late last night when he said that the preparation and execution were the reason why the Dolphins lost today. We thought we were prepared for this, and clearly we weren't. That sounds a lot like the coach ought to be fired, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that you know more about the front office and ownership group that is in Miami. But if I was in that position, and I think the fans are fully checked out, and we were both South Florida people, and if there's one thing that we do know, it's that Miami people care about the Dolphins on a different level than they care about other sports. So I just don't know how Dolphins fans can just see this and hear this and see the product that's out there and not show up to the stadium with a pitchfork because this team is so cooked. It's just
they showed up with a banner.
Yeah, they just play bad football. They gave up 239 rushing yards to the Carolina Panthers, who were playing with their backup running back in the game. It wasn't even their starter. Their starter was out. They had 19 rush yards for themselves in this game. So it's just like you're putting this product out on the field, and the coach after the game is saying, hey, yeah, we weren't prepared. Yeah, we weren't prepared. Then who is it on? Who is the problem there if the coach is already telling you, yeah, the team wasn't prepared?
So I think it's different when we have a coach say that, Coca. I would never have a coach say that because it just makes you look so horrible as an organization to say you were not prepared. That's your job. That's the one thing. We may not have given you the right players. We may not have a high enough payroll. We may not be able to do our jobs, but you got to prepare, at least say you're prepared. It doesn't mean you're going to win, but you got to say you're prepared. And then you're up 17-0 and blow that lead. So, query, were you prepared when you were up 17? But what you're saying is you weren't prepared to be up 17. That's got to be what Mike McDaniel was talking about, is that we did a great job early on. We were rocking, we were rolling with our game plan and my caprice. And then all of a sudden, we lost. But then they were up 24-20, Coca, and then gave up an immediate touchdown to go down 27-24. I just really don't understand how that works. And I think that Stephen Ross is going to have to do something that he has not yet contemplated. I think he's going to have to fire McDaniel, and he's going to have to fire the GM, Chris Greer. And the question is, he's got to decide when's the best time. And I would say that firing the GM after the season is the best time, or at least with 2 weeks left in the season, because you need someone just to do the mechanics of going through a season. I think you got to fire McDaniel now because he was someone who had this. He reminds me of, I just thought of it, Coca. Mike McDaniel reminds me of the young Rick Pitino. The young Rick Pitino was a guy who was like this wonder kid. He was so brilliant, and you thought he was playing chess on the basketball court while other people were playing checkers. But there was just something about him that made it so it was just difficult to stay for a long time. Except he had an incredibly great career. Do you think that Mike McDaniel has a chance to be that? Or is Mike McDaniel the one who's the wonder kid who then just cannot function in a world of a clubhouse? He cannot relate to players. He's too weird, too nerdy, too sort of inside his own self, inside his own dig me self? Or do you say to yourself, hey, job 2 is going to be the one where he'll shine. Job 3 is going to be the one where he'll shine. Because then Stephen Ross says to himself, I don't want to let him go if what I'm missing is the right players. So the owner with the Dolphins has this decision to make. Is it the players? Is it the coaching? Is it the preparation? My guy just said it was the preparation. Is it the players who are executing the preparation, which is good enough? But when your run defense has been bad for 4 weeks and then you give up 239 rushing yards, you can't say to yourself, wow, that was poor execution. You've got a bad rushing defense, and that's how it's going to be. This is the time of year in football. We are now about 50 games into a baseball season. We are in the middle of May. That's the equivalent. Remember my math. It's not exact anymore because there's 17 games. But generally, 1 game in football is 16 or 17 games in baseball. That's generally the math. So after 5 games, generally you could just say, if you want, that's around 5 times 10, about 50 games. Did I say it right? It's 10 to 1 because that's what the math is. 50 games in baseball. Let's just pretend there's roughly 30 games a month, but it's not that many, but just roughly say that. You're now 50 games into a season. You're in the middle of May. That's when managers start getting fired. That's when you start looking at trades. That's when you say it's not early. We're like in the middle to late of early, about to be in the middle. That's where the NFL season is already. The Dolphins are done.
Well, there was also something else that happened in that game, and it's the Dolphins got the ball back with a chance to win it or at least tie it. And they went incompletion to a sack. They punt the ball off, and then it's 3rd and 5. 3rd and 5. The Panthers need 1 first down to just ice the game. You're telling your defense, do not commit a penalty. And what does the defense do? Jack Jones picks up a pass interference. Panthers get an automatic first down, kneel out the clock, end of the game.
Well, hold on, though. I didn't see the play, Coca. Did you see the play? Because my question is this.
It was pass interference.
But did he do the pass interference? Because if he didn't, then there was going to be an automatic reception first down, game over anyway.
No.
Because think about that. If you know you're about to give up a completion for a first down that will lead to the kneel down formation, then you might as well commit the interference and hope that the referees were looking at hot people in the stands.
No, it wasn't even that. It was just the Panthers receiver was just breaking of his route, and the guy for the Dolphins just grabs him and then lets him go. And the ball was thrown to that receiver too, and it was, skied over his head. So it would have probably been an incompletion, but it didn't even matter. So it's just like every facet of the team is just unorganized, dysfunctional, and it's time for a change.
I know that you're a big fan guy because you always tell me that. Where are you with players who fumble the ball before scoring on breakaway runs? Because I saw you wanted to talk about this, and we've definitely talked about this on Nothing Personal before. It's happened. We've watched it, and I guess did it happen both this week that Adonai Mitchell and Imari DiMarcado did it both, where they're about to score a touchdown and they fumble?
It was back-to-back weeks. Back-to-back weeks. So we had it last week where Adonai Mitchell fumbles the ball as he's running into the end zone, and it results in a touchback. But the one this week, it cost the Cardinals the game because the Titans were able to come back and win that. So instead of going up, I believe 28-6, the Titans get the ball, score a touchdown, and now it's game on, and the rest is history there. But it's so inexcusable for a player to be doing that. I don't even understand it in a celebratory way. Like, what sort of coolness factor is it that you're dropping the football as you're running into the end zone? I'd rather a guy run fully through the back of the end zone and run into the wall before I'd see him drop the football before going into the end zone, because it's just ridiculous. I don't get it. I don't get why players want to do it. I don't think why some players think it's cool. It happens all the time, and it feels like it's something. It doesn't happen
all the time.
Okay, but I'm saying it
happens way too
happens
much.
more. It happens more than zero, which to me is just
it's just
inexcusable in itself. It needs to end. It needs to end.
All right, let's review for the people who are not focusing. When you are watching a football game, the way you score is by having possession of the ball when the ball crosses the plane of the end zone. That is the way you get points. It doesn't matter if it's on a tush push. It doesn't matter if it's on a reception, a run. It's very simple. Did the ball cross the plane? And what Coca is saying happened now 2 weeks in a row, and I know this happened last season because we talked about it, and I want to remind people of my view here. But when you have a fumble recovery or an interception where you're running to the end zone to score, or you're a running back who just gets through the line of scrimmage and is running all the way to a score, there are players who celebrate and then they literally drop the ball prior to the ball crossing the plane. Now, I don't quite get how they do that because players know where the end zone is. So what you're saying is that they are dropping the ball shy of the end zone, which makes it a fumble, and then the ball goes through the end zone, but it doesn't have to. What if the ball just drops and stays in the end zone? Can it be recovered for a
Yeah, but
touchdown?
if his own team recovers it, then yeah, it would be a touchdown. But if the other team gets it, it's just a touchback. But they're looking straight ahead, or they're looking at the crowd. They're not looking at their feet. So it's not like they're dropping it 5 yards before the end zone. They're doing it literally at the goal line. So it's like, a few inches away from what would have been a touchdown is now a turnover, and the other team gets the ball.
I have a solution. You know how I think there are chips in the football right now, aren't there, for first downs and for virtual first downs? Or is that just me thinking about Ex Machina? Aren't there now chips in the football? I
Well,
think there can be, there should be.
I think there's always been a chip in the football. But go on.
I want an electric zapper. I want the ability of the coach on any play. I want the ability of a coach to be able to zap the ball that impacts the player to remind the player where they are. Or if you don't want the electric zapper, like when you get within the 5-yard line, the zap goes off so you know to pay attention. Hey, I'm near the goal line. Or I got another one, which is an earpiece that all players wear, because I didn't think any players would want to ever wear earpieces. And now pitchers, catchers, infielders, everyone's wearing pitch comm, and it turns out the players don't care. How about if we allow communication with players during the course of a game and they all have the IFB in? What do we care? Why can't you yell at your player, don't fumble, don't drop the ball, you're at the 10, 5,
They should,
score.
when you
Why can't
when you
someone be
go
in
to a
charge of that?
restaurant, when you go to a restaurant and you're waiting for your table and they give you that little device, and when it's your
The
time
buzzer.
to come up, it buzzes. Zzz.
Vibrate.
That's what. Just put that in the football. So when you cross the goal line, the football vibrates, and then
And so the player
you're in
has
the
to
end zone.
wait. Wait a minute, Coca. That's even more brilliant. So the player has to wait for the vibration. That's how they know they've scored.
Yep.
I love that.
But
We're going to do
in this-
something here, Coca, because if I'm running a team that this happened to, I think it's possible that I'd blow a gasket.
In this game, there was also one of in all of football, I don't know if we'd ever see this type of play again, where Cam Ward throws an interception. The guy from the Cardinals goes down untouched, and as he's going down, he fumbles the football. The ball is then kicked like 10 yards backwards into the Cardinals' end zone, and it's recovered by the Titans for a touchdown. And it was one of the wildest plays I've ever seen in my life, and I almost guarantee we will never see anything like that again, and that's also what helped contribute to the Titans' comeback and their victory.
So the Cardinals end up getting. Do the Cardinals get charged for it? So is it Titans turn the ball over on interception, then the Cardinals get a turnover for a fumble, and the Titans get a touchdown recovery?
Yeah, so it went interception to Cam Ward. Then the player for the Cardinals gets charged with, he gets the interception. Then he also gets charged with the fumble. And then a player on the Titans gets a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
We found a way. We would have our sports psychologists do this, Coco, where we would have them meet with the players over certain issues. One of the issues that was always very important to me was understanding where you are in a game, was to be present and understand the game situation. And in baseball, it's even more important because it's a game where that every pitch, you've got a period of time where you don't have to concentrate. And then once the pitcher's back on the rubber, you have to snap back into it. And then the pitch comes, you get to stand up, you get to relax, you can look into the stands. But then when the pitcher's ready, you're locked in again. And so there's a lot of back and forth. To me, in football, I would argue that even in between plays, you have to be locked in because you have to know what the next play is. You have to look up what the next formation is. You have to know where you're supposed to be. In baseball, I generally know just instinctually where I go when a ball is hit where, who's on base, what where I'm throwing the ball if I get it. You go through all those scenarios in your head. I don't understand how we can't get players to know the scenario when they do an interception and they don't realize that the best thing to do is to just go down. We've seen it with offensive players where the smartest thing to do is to go down on the one and let the clock run out. Like, don't worry about anything. Don't give a kickoff or another possession to the other team. But for whatever reason, players tend to not be good at situational football or in some cases other sports, but that would be another example where the earpiece would be good. Like, hey, you intercepted the ball, stay down. But I guess people don't do that.
So last year, one of your wait to sees, and it was one of the things that you were really into, was that A.J. Brown for the Eagles was such a distraction with reading his book on the sidelines, and it came out that he always reads a book, blah, 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 blah. Well, you said that he should be released, or not released. You said he shouldn't be on the team come this season. Well, the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl, but now here we already are in week 5, and we've got story after story after story about how A.J. Brown isn't happy with the offense, and now Devonta Smith, who's the other wide receiver on the team, isn't happy with the offense, and now the Eagles have picked up their first loss of the season in a game where they led at home. I believe they were up 17-3 against the Broncos, ended up losing that game. And then after the game, Jalen Hurts had to answer questions about the offense and what's going on with the offense.
Do you have tape of that? Are you introducing a tape?
Well, I thought you were going to pick up from there, but I can read it.
I will pick up from there, but I do have a quick question. Is A.J. Brown complaining before the game was lost? Was he a problem? Because I thought he'd be a problem. The reason I thought he wouldn't be on the team, even though they won the Super Bowl, is I thought he and Hurts didn't get along, and I thought he was just a bad actor that did not fit in with the Eagles, but they brought him back. And now are you saying that he's been an issue all season, or did this just happen after this first loss the Eagles got yesterday?
Yeah, he hasn't really gotten the football at all this season. So it's one of those situations where I believe a story came out on The Athletic through Diana Rossini about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and about how they were unhappy. And there was a post last week after the game. I think A.J. Brown didn't have a good game again, and then he posted immediately onto social media one of those, cryptic sort of tweets where you get what he's saying, but he's not saying what he wants to say. And that led to this, where we've had like another week of not top-tier production from the wide receiver one there, and it led to questioning of Jalen Hurts.
So here we go. If I'm going to do a wait to see, if I'm going to re-up this, I'm doing this based on you, which is I've not done this before. If I told you that I wanted to do a wait to see that A.J. Brown is not going to be on the Eagles at the end of this year, would you say that is completely ridiculous because he's their highest paid, best number one? They can't do it no matter how much Hurts hates him. It's not going to change. Or would you say that's a pretty aggressive wait to see, but it's bad enough right now where they're ranked 30th out of 32 teams in total offense that they've got to make a change?
I would say it's a bad one just because this seems to be how they operate, right? They operate in this world where it's like us against the world sort of mentality, where whether it's Nick Sirianni, and the dislike that people around the league have for him and just the way that he goes about, handling himself, where they have that big Dom security guard on the sidelines. Howie Roseman sometimes comes off as a little smug and I'm smarter than everybody. So I think it really just is how this team operates in this sort of dysfunction. And last year they were able to put it together and they won a Super Bowl. This year the expectation is the same. And this was their first loss of the season, and they're acting like a team that's 0-5. And that's the part that I don't understand, that if like winning is what matters and you just won a Super Bowl, why isn't the buy-in from everyone, hey, we don't care how we get it done. I don't care if I get the football 50 times a game or if I get the football 0 times a game. We're winning games. Like, why is that?
I wish we could play music, Coca. I wish we could play the music of love and of fantasy and some parallel world where everyone just gets along like that. But the reason why it's so hard for teams to go back to back, the reason why generally it doesn't happen, is that keeping teams motivated, keeping players all pushing the same direction. It's just a different feeling when you're going for your first versus going for your second. And I've always had the belief as an executive that I'd rather win 2, 3, 4 because that's just going to make my legacy better. It's going to make me even better at what I do and looked at as better. Let's keep winning. But it's hard to keep that same exact drive. So if Jalen Hurts, we don't know this, but let's pretend Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown don't get along. And let's say that A.J. Brown is not getting the ball and he deserves to get the ball. When you're going through and winning the Super Bowl last year the way they did, you get to sort of ignore it. But then when the next season comes, even when you're 4-0 and now 4-1, you can't ignore it. So, Coca, I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to go wait to see. An official wait to see when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, fine. Put it in the document at davidsamsonpodcast.com. Based on Coca's telling me that A.J. Brown is unhappy with the offense. My view is A.J. Brown will manifest that unhappiness with conduct detrimental to the team, and the Eagles are going to have to move on. So, wait to see, Coca. A.J. Brown will not be on the Eagles when this season ends. I'm going to get it wrong, Coca, but I'm doing it.
But now we can talk about the real stuff. And the real stuff here is that the Ravens lost 44-10.
No one
44-10. It was one of the worst home losses. It might have been the worst home loss in Baltimore football history. It was definitely the most disgusting game that I've ever seen. And then once again, we have a coach in John Harbaugh who comes out and says, hey, it starts with me. It starts with me. Yes, it does. But it's also everybody else too, because the players weren't great. The execution was terrible. And I'm just tired of these excuses because we have a defensive coordinator in Zach Orr who used to be a player for the team. Last year, the Ravens defense was one of the worst defenses in football. This year, they're one of the worst defenses in football again, and Harbaugh is just too stubborn to move on. He doesn't want to make a change. But is there ever a point where you have a coach who's been there for so long, and you're in the front office, where you allow him to make these decisions, where you allow him to keep these coordinators around? No. I can't do it.
Coca, we fire coaches all the time. Football. But hold on, I need better information from this. Did Harbaugh after the game say that we were not prepared? Did he do a McDaniel? Is he another coach who dropped a McDaniel by saying we were not prepared? I thought Lamar wasn't playing. I thought they had a ton of injuries, and I thought that this was not. What was the line on that game? This couldn't have been.
It was 1.5. It was plus 1.5.
That's not.
They lost by 34. They lost by 34. The game was plus 1.5. So you can say they weren't expected to win this game. It was expected to be close. And I'm tired of the injury excuse because Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers, that's a coach where every single season it seems that a player is getting hurt, a star player is getting hurt, and then they have multiple players who are out, and they still find ways to win games. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, and Kyle Shanahan turned him into one of the highest paid players in the league. Then he has Mac Jones, who was a failure in New England, come and be the quarterback for his team and fill in, and he's got an injured knee, and he comes out and he throws for over 300 yards in a game that they beat the Rams. So I'm tired of hearing these excuses about injuries and injuries and injuries. Derrick Henry is still there. Derrick Henry has been a failure this season, and is that because of what? Because of what?
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to stop you right here for two reasons. One, going from Mets to Ravens the way you have, I need you to be healthy. I need you to be operated at all cylinders. I feel like you're in sports fan hell right now.
Oh, it's just bad. It's just bad. I just don't like being proven right by my teams without them giving me a chance to be wrong. Because the expectation for this team was that they were going to be a Super Bowl contender. That was always the expectation. And my expectation was going to be, no, they're not. The offensive line was bad coming into the season, and then you have people telling us, oh, no, the offensive line is going to be a great offensive line. And you're like, how? Are you watching the same stuff that we're watching? It's just that Lamar Jackson is so good at playing quarterback that he makes these positions that are so bad look good. But now we have a defense that's just hurt. There are obviously players that are out, but they were bad when those players were healthy. So it can't even be the excuse that they have all these injuries because they were still bad when those players were there.
So the DraftKings get it wrong with the 1.5. Now it's not just DraftKings, but all the people who are making lines. Because if so, I want to hear the fact that you pounced against the Ravens. Because did you look at the 1.5 point line and realize that it was just going to be a crushing?
No, because I'm not that I'm not there. Like I'm not a guy to bet against my teams. I can't
Got
do
it.
that. I
Okay.
at least show them that much respect is to not bet against them. But listen, if we want to continue this, the next topic is a great one that I feel like I should stay here for. If you'll let me stay here for.
Which one? You're
Oh,
always
it's
welcome to be here.
well, it's the one where the Mets have fired every single coach except for Carlos Mendoza. Every single
Oh,
coach
no.
got fired. The pitching coaches, the hitting coaches, the bench coach resigned. The assistant coaches were allowed to seek employment everywhere else. But somehow, some way, Carlos Mendoza is not the problem. He's not the problem. It was every single other coach in the organization that was the problem. And now we're going to have an organization with coaches who don't even know Mendoza, who don't have the relationship with Mendoza. Now they're going to come in and they're going to turn the entire thing around, but it is not Carlos Mendoza's fault. So you want another guy who knows. He knows who the problem is, and it starts with him. But now the problem is not him. It was everybody else.
So what you're referring to, Coca, and I'm sorry, is that the Mets, once they did not make the playoffs, and David Stearns met the media and specifically said that Carlos Mendoza is coming back, but that the coaches are going to be under evaluation. I would like to remind everyone that we evaluate our coaches throughout the season. We do not wait till the end of the season to have the meeting about whether we want certain coaches to be back or not. We will have that decision made. And if the Mets had ended up making the playoffs, but not winning the World Series, they still would have made coaching changes. So the way we would do it is we would have in our mind what decisions we're making, and then we would just wait for the team to lose because 29 out of 30 times you're going to lose. And what we would say is that if we win the World Series, we will keep that staff together for the next year. But anything shy of winning the World Series, we're going to make these changes that we knew we were going to make. So when David Stearns comes and tells you that he backs Carlos Mendoza, you got to believe him. Because if Stevie Cohen had said, I want Mendoza fired, David Stearns would have come out and said postseason, we're evaluating everyone. But when Stevie Cohen allows David Stearns to keep Mendoza, and that's what David Stearns wants, David Stearns comes out publicly and says, we back Mendoza, he will manage in the 2026 season. But when Stevie Cohen says to David Stearns, you certainly can't tell me you're bringing back the whole staff, David Stearns says, well, Mendoza would bring back the whole staff. And then you go to your manager and say, hey, buddy, I know you are loyal to your staff, but you're not getting fired. Lucky you. We've got to make changes. We've got to show the owner that we are not accepting what went on. Because managers will always back their entire staff. Not one time in almost 2 decades did a manager come up to me and say, oh, we got to get rid of that coach. I would get rid of that bullpen, side, third base, hitting, pitching coach. Forget it. Every manager says the same thing. These guys, David, you're wrong. They're working so hard. They're so prepared. They're the anti-Mike McDaniel. Except they didn't say that about Barry Bonds. But every other coach they said that about. So, do I believe that Mendoza in any way sullied all of these coaches under him and said, save me, save my job, but get rid of the coaches? No, didn't happen. Do I believe David Stearns went up to Steve Cohen and said, hey, I think that Stearns said to Cohen, I think Mendoza's the answer, but let's get rid of all these coaches? Horse hockey. Steve Cohen looked at David Stearns and said, give me something. You got to give me something for this outrageous season where we didn't make the playoffs because our fan base is going to love it. We're going to keep, except for Coca, we're going to keep Mendoza and then jettison all these coaches so that everyone believes that we've got it nailed down. How crazy is that? What do you think? We're stupid? Don't worry. Get rid of John Gibbons as the bench coach and everything's going to work out. By the way, Jeremy Hefner, who's done tremendous things for some of the pitchers, keep him. Get rid of him. He's fired. The Mets are not going to be better, Coca, and you know it. Let's go to the nothing personal pick of the day, please. Coca, this is something that is serious in that we're now below 500. We haven't been below 500 in a long time. I'm cold and I'm annoyed. We are 125 and 126. We have the Philly weekend. The Phillies should win. The Eagles should win. Everything's going to be great. My friends in Philly are going to have fun while stuffing themselves on Danny and Coop's cheesesteaks on Avenue A. Nope, the Phillies and Ohtani. Phillies didn't beat Ohtani. They did not beat Ohtani. And the Eagles didn't beat the Broncos. They didn't even forget covering. They couldn't even beat the Broncos. That's just a tough day for Philly. But guess what? G for P, baby. I'm a glutton for punishment. There's no way the Phillies are losing 2 games to the Dodgers at home. It's just not happening. Yeah, I understand who's going for the Dodgers. I do. I get it. I understand who's going for the Phillies. I do. I get it. I mean, I just want to see if anything's changed. I just want to see right now. I just want to just make sure who's going, because sometimes you wake up and there's a different guy going, and I was under the sole impression that we were going to get back to seeing our guy Blake, and that's who's still going. Blake Snell went 7 innings in the first round against the Reds. He's going against Luzardo, who's hot, cold, former Marlin. I'm taking Luzardo. I'm doing it. Luzardo and the Phillies are underdogs at home. And if they lose game 2 at home, it's done. So this is it. For the Phillies, this is a game 7. They cannot lose to the Dodgers. They are not going to win 3 in a row, 2 of them being at Chavez Ravine. This, to me, is a 5-star number 1 guaranteed. I am in like Flynn, back to 500. Hell yeah. Phillies plus 109 over the Dodgers. But there's a Monday night game, and I'm looking for the sweep because I got to get not to 500. I want to get over 500. You're going to watch baseball, as you should, but if you're watching football, you got the Mahomes and the Kelseys. Did you listen? I mean, I got to tell you something funny, Coca. Side note. All right, I'll give you the quick pick. It's Chiefs minus 3.5 over the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So we're taking the Phillies and the Chiefs. Can we go to Taylor Swift now for 30 seconds? I know that the audience is going to kill me. But my daughter happens to love Taylor Swift, and so there was a desire to play Taylor Swift music, the new music that came out, all 42 minutes of it. Quick question. Was she really talking that much about Travis Kelce's ding dong? Like, was that really a thing? I didn't listen to one song. I didn't read one lyric. But that is what I'm being told. Coca, did you listen to the 42-minute album or not?
No.
So, did you say no in my ear or on the show?
I am on the show right now.
Oh, thank you, Coca. We're live. This is how it goes. Do you know anyone who listened to Taylor Swift's 42-minute album?
No.
Okay. You're not helpful at all. See you later. Well, I do. And I was given the scouting report. It was all about what's going on south of the border with Travis Kelce. Seriously? Let's go on. Do you remember the College Sports Commission? One of my favorite things we've done on this show was a conversation about NIL and the House settlement, and when a majorly amazing employee from Major League Baseball Department of Investigations went over to the NCAA and became the head of the College Sports Commission, the head of this thing that is going to decide what NIL deals are good and what are bad. Does anyone remember this conversation? Tell me you do. Well, what came out this weekend, Front Office Sports did a whole expose about it, that the College Sports Commission that evaluates NILs is already an unmitigated disaster. Shocking. That conference collectives are already ignoring the College Sports Commission, not waiting for this people to say, oh, that's a $500 deal. That's a $2,000 deal. That's a $10,000 deal. Well, that guy for doing that with that suit and car service and that filming of the commercial, that's the anti-Kawhi Leonard. That's a real $28 million deal. Come on. We told you that it is preposterous. How is it going to work? Well, the collectives that work for the conferences, the major conference collectives, have said, forget it. I'm not waiting around. I'm not asking for permission. I may be willing to ask forgiveness at one point, but I sure as heck fire, I'm not asking for permission. So now, the College Sports Commission, with its 4 full-time employees, that's it, is overwhelmed. And what the ACC collective in this Front Office Sports story is quoted as saying, hey, we're literally looking at a system collapsing within the first 5 months of it being launched. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that NIL Go wasn't going to work? Who would have thought that a anonymous tip line saying, hey, Kawhi Leonard's getting $28 million for doing nothing, honey? Why is it that you had the feeling that, and because you all wanted it, which to me made me have to go against those people who I really do love, who are into college football, and they are well-known analysts and they're former players, how important it is for players to get paid and yada, yada, yada. This is the best thing ever. And I said, are you sure? Because here's what doesn't happen when you try to make huge systemic changes. It doesn't happen that you're thinking enough of the unintended consequences of those actions that you have been willing to give your life to implement. It is extremely difficult to fight for a democracy, and then you learn it's extremely difficult to operate a democracy. It is extremely hard to fight for the right to get paid for a job. But man, it's even harder to figure out how to play under a new set of rules that aren't even written, and to figure it out as you go along when you're going to need amendments from time to time. You might as well take the first 10 and just say right away, why don't we call them the Bill of Rights? NIL, house settlement, collectives being paid under the table, over the table for your name, image, and likeness, all of that stuff. We told you it's the wild, wild west. And now you're beginning to see it. So what happens? What do they do? So the NCAA has to get together right now. They're trying to figure out how to do 2 things. But the first thing is so much more important, they can't even get to the second thing. The first thing the NCAA is trying to do, how do we maintain our relevance? How do we stop the power conferences from forming some sort of super league where the NCAA is in charge of podunk you and it's a game of water polo between baseball players and soccer players? How do we avoid that? How do we keep the perceived power we have and fund all of the great boondoggles to Final Fours that we get to do? That's what the NCAA is thinking about. What I'm thinking about is not the Super League, because that doesn't work in my head. I'm not thinking about the NCAA because the way they're operated doesn't work in my head. I've got a better plan. My plan is that I want there to be an governmental entity, and I don't mean the U.S. government. I don't mean the NCAA. I mean the concept of receivership, conservatorship. I'm talking about the concept where people are brought in to run a business who have nothing to do with the business. They just know how to run businesses. The NCAA needs to be run by people who are not incentivized to bow at the feet of conferences or athletes who are not interested in anything other than turning around the business of the NCAA, because the business of the NCAA is the problem. The business of understanding how to run your business. The business of understanding revenues, expenses, profits, allocations, payments, distributions. These are all basic business principles that the NCAA is not getting right. They need people in government relations. They have them. They're the wrong ones. I want new people and new leadership brought in, and I want control given to this new entity to run college sports. Now, before you say that that is absurd, I ask you to consider, is any plan absurd when you know for sure that the existing plan doesn't work? Don't you want to have the view that when you're running a business that's not working, you're not making the money you want to make? Don't you want to have the view that every possible suggestion or plan, however radical it is, may end up being the right one? When you're holding on to hope, when it comes to a sickness of a member of your family, you can't dismiss somebody who you think that is the quackiest, stupidest idea, that I should stand in the middle of Times Square, look up at the sky, chant for an hour my appreciation of the God of traffic lights, and that will make my daughter healthy. Do I not owe it to myself to stand in Times Square and yell up? Because what if they're right? All of the absurd and amazing ideas that have been sent to me, whether it's at David P. Samson on Twitter, keep going. DavidSamsonPodcast.com, keep going. Wherever you can find me on the street, Coca. 2 people on the street know what's going on in my life, have stopped me, and have had like a thought, a prayer. How do I not owe it to myself to try anything and everything? So, when you see that you're this close to having a system that will implode, given the fact that this system is new and is exactly what we thought everyone wanted, you better look at something insane and crazy, because the way the NCAA is going, the way the College Sports Commission is going, the way NIL House settlement is going, all of it is failing. And you got 2 choices when something's failing. Put your head between your knees and kiss your butt goodbye. Run away to the Philippines and try to film an old season of Survivor. Disappear, or you stand up and say, what's next? I have a strong feeling that that's exactly what's going to happen. I want to end the show going back to something that we started with on the baseball side. And first, I want to thank Coca. Coca was not aware I was going to ask him to help with the show. I was not able to communicate with Coca as much this weekend as I normally do. It was that kind of weekend. And I apologize to you and to the audience, not for Coca, because we love when Coca comes on the show, but for me not prepping Coca as sufficiently as I should have. I want to go back to baseball and mention something about playoff baseball. Because when you watch the Yankees and they lose and it's 13-7, and you take Derek's point of view that it's moral victories, I want to go back to the beginning of hour 1. I want to remind you that the type of moral victory that I would be looking for is the actual victory. And it all goes back to what Pablo and I talked about, and to what I talk about with you about consequentialism. There's winning and there's losing. There is nothing in between. Losing 1-0 in 13 innings is losing 10-0 in 9 innings, is losing 20-1. And we would tell you there's different kinds of losses, and we're full of it. When the playoffs are here, there is only winning and losing. There is nothing else. No matter what we say to you, we got the closer up. That was a great victory for us. Horse hockey. The Yankees have to win 3 in a row. But tonight, we go to the National League. Make sure you watch the games. See you tomorrow, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. live. That's when we'll be here. It's just business. This is nothing personal.